Have you ever lost everything in a single moment? Not just a person, but the future you built in your mind, the security you once held like armor, the belief that love would always protect you. This is the story of one woman who watched her entire world burn, only to rise from the ashes stronger than ever. Asterisk, have you ever had your entire world flip in the span of a single breath? Not with thunder or fire, but in quiet, subtle seconds, where everything you believed in quietly crumbled, and you're left standing in the debris of dreams you once thought unbreakable. That's how Emily Torres remembered that night. Not for the screaming or the betrayal, but for the silence that followed. Deafening, hollow. Final dot. It had been raining softly that Tuesday evening in Chicago, the kind of rain that made the streets look like black glass. Emily sat curled on the corner of her leather couch, one leg tucked beneath her, staring at her phone. She wore a cozy, oversized sweater, his sweater, and kept glancing at the door, waiting for it to open, waiting for Jordan. He'd promised to come early tonight, promised they'd talk. She'd even made his favorite chicken parmesan with too much garlic, just how he liked it. But the clock ticked past 10:30 again. She ran her fingers over the rim of her coffee mug, lukewarm now. A single thought clung to her chest like ice. He's pulling away. Jordan hadn't said it out loud, but she could feel it. In the way his hugs got shorter. In the way he didn't answer her texts right away. In the way his eyes, those warm, hazel eyes, no longer looked at her the same. For months, she had excused it. He was busy, stressed, under pressure. Tech startups weren't kind to relationships, she told herself. But deep down, something didn't sit right. She had always trusted her intuition, and tonight, it was whispering louder than ever. Without fully deciding, she stood, grabbed her coat, tossed her keys into her bag, and slipped on her boots. She was going to him. She didn't want to live with assumptions. She needed answers. Real ones. Jordan had moved into a new apartment across town 6 weeks ago. A temporary setup, he said, was closer to his company's new office. Emily hadn't been there yet. He kept saying it was messy, not ready for guests. That should have been the first sign. The city was quieter than usual, the rain dulling even the taxi's usual urgency. Emily's fingers trembled slightly as she pressed the buzzer. No answer. She tried again. Still nothing. But just as she was about to turn away, a woman came out of the building and politely held the door for her. Thanks, Emily murmured, her voice thin. She took the elevator to the 4th floor. Her breath caught when she reached his door. The hallway smelled faintly of paint and carpet, glue, new and unfamiliar. Just like everything else about him lately. She knocked. No answer. Her hand hovered over the doorknob. He had given her a key once, months ago. Just in case, he had said, smiling. Back then, she had believed he meant forever. She slowly turned it in the lock. The door clicked open. The apartment was dim, lit only by a soft lamp in the corner. Her shoes made no sound against the carpet as she stepped inside, and then everything stopped. In the middle of the living room stood Jordan, his back turned to her, shirt half unbuttoned. He wasn't alone. A woman, unfamiliar and striking, stood facing him, her hands resting on his chest. She whispered something Emily couldn't hear, but Jordan laughed quietly, comfortably, as though this was not a betrayal but a routine. Emily couldn't move, couldn't blink, couldn't breathe. It wasn't just the fact that he was with someone else. It was how effortlessly he had let go of their world, the one they had built together for years, gone, like a file deleted without a second glance. And then he saw her. Jordan's eyes widened. The other woman turned. Time slowed. Emily, he said, stunned. But she was already walking backward. No words, no tears, just a thick wall of numbness crawling up her spine. She didn't slam the door. She didn't scream. She just left quietly, with the same silence she found him in. Outside, the rain had grown heavier. It soaked through her coat, her hair, her bones. She walked past buildings, past people, past the life she had imagined would be hers. At some point, her legs gave in and she collapsed onto a bench near Millennium Park. Her fingers gripped the edge of the seat like she might fall into the earth if she let go. That was when it hit her, not just the betrayal, but the weight of everything she had sacrificed for a future that no longer existed. She had chosen Jordan over opportunities, over friends, over herself, at times, and for what? A shaky breath escaped her lips. Somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered, not cruelly, but firmly, "This is not the end of you. This is the beginning of something else. But right now, It felt like rock bottom. She didn't know then that this night, this very bench, this very silence would mark the start of a story she never saw coming. Because soon, a stranger would sit beside her, and nothing about her life would ever be the same again. ChatGPT said. The rain didn't stop that night. It kept falling as if the sky itself understood what she was going through. Emily remained on the bench, her body soaked, her soul even heavier. The city that once felt alive and promising now pressed in on her like a cage. Her phone buzzed a few times. Jordan, she didn't even look. There was nothing left to say. She had seen all the words in his eyes. Every lie, every excuse she had brushed away, suddenly made cruel sense. She had been in love with an illusion. She didn't know how long she'd been sitting there. Time had no shape. The wind had grown colder. Most people would have gone home by now. But Emily, she had no idea where home was anymore. Not the penthouse. Not the office. Not even within herself. Then, a voice. Long night. She blinked, startled. A man had taken the other end of the bench, a respectable distance away, holding an umbrella that dripped lightly onto the pavement. His suit looked sharp, but not in a flashy, more like quiet authority. His voice was low, calm, not intrusive, just present. Emily hesitated. Most people would have ignored him, but something in his tone wasn't pushy. It was steady, almost kind. You could say that, she answered, her voice barely audible. The man didn't look at her, not directly. Instead, he stared ahead at the dark sky, as if waiting for her to speak again on her own terms. It wasn't until minutes passed in silence that he said something else. Whatever it is, I hope it doesn't convince you that this is all there is. She turned toward him, confused. What pain? Disappointment? Some people go through something like this and start believing it's the whole story. But it's not. It's just a chapter. Emily said nothing. Her chest tightened. The words felt too close, too real. You don't even know what happened, she said, more defensively than she intended. You're right. I don't. But I've been that person sitting in the rain. I've been on benches like this. Trust me, you're not the only one, he said gently. She studied him. He looked maybe early 30s, clean-cut, but there was something deeper behind his eyes, like he carried storms of his own. Still, he sat like a man who had made peace with them. Do you always talk to strangers in the rain? She asked with the smallest hint of a smile. Only the ones who look like they're trying not to disappear. For some reason, that hit her harder than anything Jordan had said in weeks. They sat quietly again. Cars passed. A horn honked in the distance. The city breathed around them, but for a moment, the bench felt like its own little island. I don't know where to go, she whispered. The man glanced at her for the first time, and his eyes weren't full of pity. They held something stronger, recognition, maybe even respect. You don't need to know that tonight. All you need to do is remember you still can. He stood up slowly, reached into his coat pocket, and pulled out a business card. If you ever feel like starting over, he said, offering it to her, come by this address. No expectations, just a conversation. She looked at the card, a simple black rectangle with clean white lettering. Noah Clark, Clark and Holden Group, Executive Office, 41st floor. She raised an eyebrow. What are you, some kind of motivational therapist? He chuckled. Not exactly, but I do believe in second chances. And then he walked away, leaving her on the bench with only the rain, her thoughts, and a mysterious card with more weight than she realized. That night, Emily didn't go back to the penthouse. She checked into a quiet boutique hotel downtown and wrapped herself in silence. The business card sat on the nightstand, untouched but not ignored. She didn't sleep much. Her mind played. Old memories like films on repeat. Laughs with Jordan, their first apartment, promises made under stars. It was painful. But something strange happened in the early morning light. The pain didn't paralyze her anymore. It just sat there, present, real, but less powerful. As dawn broke over the city, Emily looked at the card again. Noah Clark. She had no idea what she was walking into, but for the first time in days, maybe even weeks, she felt the tiniest flicker of curiosity, not about him but about herself, who she might become if she stopped letting life happen to her and started reaching for it again. She wasn't healed, not yet, but something inside had cracked open, and through that crack, the first seed of hope was growing. Have you ever felt pulled toward something, not with logic, but with quiet instinct? That kind of nudge you can't explain, the kind that tells you, go there, even if you're not ready. That's what Emily felt 3 days later, standing at the glass entrance of Clark and Holden Group. She had stared at the business card too many times to count, turning it over like it held secrets in the ink. She had Googled the company, a high-level business consulting firm with a reputation for turning startups into giants. Quietly powerful, discreet, elite. Noah Clark, she'd learned, wasn't just an employee. He was one of the founders. It didn't make sense. Why would a man like that stop to talk to a stranger on a bench in the rain? But here she was, dressed in the most put-together outfit she could find that didn't make her feel like she was pretending. Dark slacks, soft ivory blouse, hair tied back. She didn't want to look like she was trying too hard, and yet, she felt like she was trying for the first time in a while. The receptionist greeted her with a practiced smile. Do you have an appointment? No, but I was told I could come by Mr. Clark. Her voice wavered slightly, not in weakness but in unfamiliarity. She wasn't used to showing up without a plan. The receptionist blinked, typed something into her screen, and then, surprisingly, nodded. He said you might. One moment, please. Emily's heart skipped. He'd remembered. Minutes later, she was in an elevator, ascending past 30 floors, watching the skyline appear and expand around her like a painting coming to life. The higher she went, the more her past seemed to shrink below. When the doors opened, she was met not by a secretary or assistant, but Noah himself. Emily, he said warmly, not surprised, not smug, just as though he'd been expecting her. Eventually, she stepped out, and for the first time got a real look at his world. The office was sleek but not cold. Floor-to-ceiling windows, open design, soft lighting, the kind of space that invited you to think differently, even breathe differently. I wasn't sure if I'd actually come, she admitted, as they walked toward a corner room with a view that seemed to stretch beyond the city itself. Most people don't, he replied simply, offering her a seat. Emily sank into the chair, suddenly aware of everything she didn't know about herself anymore. Who she was, what she wanted, where she was going. I'm not sure what this is, she said honestly, or why you offered. He nodded. That night, you looked like someone who had forgotten how much she was worth. I've been there. I don't offer this to many people, but something told me you might need a door, not a solution, just a door. She stared at him. There was no pressure in his words, just space. And when was the last time anyone gave her space instead of expectations? He said you've been there, she said. What happened to you? For a second, his gaze darkened, not with sadness, but with the weight of memory. My father left when I was 9. My mother worked 3 jobs. I had to fight my way into every room I've ever stood in, and even then, I lost things, people, trust. At one point, I thought pain was just the price of breathing, but then I realized, we're allowed to want more. Emily didn't realize she was holding her breath until she let it out. I used to want more, she whispered. Then I started settling for someone who made me feel like too much and never enough at the same time. That's not love, Noah said quietly. That's survival disguised as safety. The words lodged in her chest because they were true. Jordan hadn't made her feel loved, he made her feel tolerated, and somewhere along the way, she'd convinced herself that was enough. I don't know what I'm doing, she admitted. I don't have a 5-year plan or a business pitch. I don't even know what I'd ask you for. Noah leaned forward, hands folded. You don't need a pitch. This isn't about investment. It's about direction. Do you still design? Emily blinked. I haven't touched a sketch pad in months. Why? Because every time I look at it, I see the version of me that believed in something that wasn't real. Then it's time to create a version of you that believes in herself. Silence filled the room again, but this time it didn't feel empty. It felt full of possibility, of questions, of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Here's what I'm offering, Noah said finally. Not a job, not a rescue, just space. You can use one of our smaller offices. For a while, no contracts, no strings. Just a place to come and create again. Whatever you want, even if it leads nowhere. Especially if it leads nowhere. Because sometimes, doing something for no reason is the only way to find the real reason. Emily stared at him. Her throat felt tight. Why are you doing this? He smiled gently. Because someone once gave me a desk when I had nothing but a dream and a broken heart. And it changed everything. She didn't say yes right away. But she didn't say no either. Instead, she took the keycard he offered, and that night, for the first time in a long time, she opened her old sketchbook. Again, the pages smelled like dust and memory. Her pencil hesitated at first, like her fingers had forgotten how to move with purpose. But then, slowly, a line appeared, then another, a shoulder, a dress, a feeling. She wasn't healed, but she was creating, and that was the beginning of something beautiful. Asterisk, most people assume healing is loud, that it comes with grand gestures, dramatic breakthroughs, or some cinematic moment of clarity. But for Emily, healing began in quiet. It was in the soft scratch of a pencil across thick sketch paper, the hush of early mornings before the city stirred, the first sip of coffee brewed in the small kitchen just outside the temporary office Noah had given her, a room with large windows and light that poured in like encouragement. Days passed, then weeks, and slowly, her soul started waking up. She came in every day, not because she had to but because she wanted to. It felt unfamiliar, but right, like rediscovering a part of herself she thought had died. At first, her sketches were shaky, cautious, but each day they grew bolder, softer fabrics, complex silhouettes, colors she used to avoid but now embraced. She began pinning her work along the walls, at first shyly, and then with quiet pride, not to show off, but to remind herself, "You're still in here, you never left." One morning, while she was rearranging fabric swatches and scribbling notes beside a new design, a gentle knock came at her door. It was Noah. "Got a minute?" he asked. She glanced up, blinking from the creative fog she'd been happily lost in. "Yeah, sure." He stepped in, not as a CEO, but as someone who'd become a steady presence in her strange new chapter. In the beginning, their conversations were brief, casual, but somewhere along the way, a gentle rhythm had formed and spoken, unforced. Noah studied the designs on her wall. "You've been busy." "I guess I have," she said, surprised to hear the pride in her own voice. He picked up one sketch-on evening gown with delicate beadwork. "This is incredible." "Thanks," she murmured, her cheeks flushing. "It's strange. I used to design to prove something to the world. Now it feels like I'm designing to remind myself I still have something to offer." Noah nodded, then held up a small folder. "There's something you might want to look at." He opened it, laying it on the desk in front of her. Inside was a brochure, elegant, minimal. It was for a designer showcase, the Meridian Gala, one of the most exclusive up-and-coming fashion events in the city, dedicated to discovering fresh voices in the design world. "They're taking final applications," he said. "I think you should submit." Emily blinked. "What? No, I'm not ready." "I haven't even You don't have to be ready," he interrupted, gently but firmly. "You just have to be willing." She stared at the flyer. Her fingers brushed the glossy page. "I used to dream about this show," she admitted, "but that was a long time ago." Noah didn't push. He simply smiled. "Sometimes dreams don't expire. They just wait for us to catch up." After he left, Emily sat in silence. Her heart beat faster, not from fear, but from the possibility. Could she really do this? Was she strong enough to show her work to the world again? To believe in herself that deeply? She thought of Jordan, of the way he had dismissed her dreams, redirected her energy toward his, of how she'd shrunk herself to keep him comfortable. And then she thought of the night on the bench, of Noah's voice, of the light inside her that had refused to die, no matter how dim it became. That night, she filled out the application, not because she was sure of herself, but because for once, she was tired of waiting for permission. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. She poured herself into her designs, letting her emotions guide her hand. Grief, courage, forgiveness, strength. Every piece she created told a piece of her story without needing a single word. She often worked late, the city glowing outside, her window like a silent cheerleader, and sometimes Noah would stop by, not to offer advice, but just to sit, to listen, to be present. Their connection deepened, not with romance or rush, but with understanding, a friendship rooted in quiet truth. One evening, as she was fitting fabric on a mannequin, Noah appeared in the doorway again, but this time, he looked different, a quiet excitement beneath his usual calm. "They accepted you," he said, holding out an envelope. Emily's breath caught. She grabbed it with trembling hands, tearing it open. "Congratulations, Emily Reeves. You've been selected as a featured designer at the Meridian Gala." She couldn't speak. All this time, she thought the world had forgotten her, but maybe it was just waiting for her to remember herself first. I don't know what to say, she finally whispered. You don't have to say anything, Noah said, eyes warm. You earned this. Every stitch, every sketch, every moment you chose to show up for yourself. Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but from something softer, stronger, gratitude, and, for the first time since her heart had been broken, Emily felt it. She was becoming again. The night of the Meridian Gala arrived like a whispered dream, soft at the edges, but glowing with significance. All across the city, it was being hailed as the place where the next great names in fashion would be discovered. But for Emily, it wasn't about discovery anymore. It was about returning not to the spotlight or some impossible pedestal, but to the version of herself she had buried. The one who once designed dresses on the back of receipts in coffee shops. The one who saw fabric and felt emotion. The one who dared to believe that art and healing could come from the same thread. She stood backstage at the grand venue, surrounded by models, assistants, and a hum of electric energy. Her gown, in total, hung gracefully on racks beside her, each one born from a different piece of her story. Soft silks, strong lines, bold details. One dress shimmered like twilight, another flowed like forgiveness. She had named the collection Unbroken. As stylists prepped the models, Emily glanced at her own reflection in a nearby mirror. She wore a simple black dress she'd designed herself, minimalist, elegant, with a subtle embroidery stitched just beneath the neckline. A hidden message only she knew. It read, "Begin again." And tonight, she truly was. Noah arrived just as the lights dimmed. He gave her a quiet nod, his presence steady and reassuring. "You ready?" he asked. "I'm terrified," she whispered, clutching the clipboard in her hands, but also kind of alive. "Then you're exactly where you need to be." The show began. One by one, the models took to the runway, each carrying a piece of Emily's transformation down the polished floor. As they walked, murmurs rippled through the crowd, heads turned, cameras clicked. Even the event coordinator, a famously stern critic, leaned in. Each dress told a story without needing to speak. There was the gown made of layered, translucent fabric, symbolizing vulnerability and growth. Another had a bodice that looked shattered, in its stitching like broken glass put back together, yet it held perfectly, stronger than before. And the final piece, a deep navy creation, flowing and sharp, fierce yet graceful. It was the embodiment of strength rediscovered. The room fell silent when it appeared. Backstage, Emily watched, hand to her chest, overwhelmed, not by applause or attention, but by the fact that she had done it. Not for them, for her. After the show, guests mingled, and people from every corner of the fashion world approached her. Editors, investors, former classmates who once scoffed at her dreams. But none of that mattered as much as the quiet moment when the event director, a tall woman with years of power in her eyes, stepped in front of her. "You," she said simply, "have something rare, not just vision, voice. Keep using it." Then she handed her a card. Emily accepted it with both hands, stunned. As the night wound down, Noah found her again near the back of the venue, where the lights were softer and the music more distant. "You did it," he said. Emily turned to him, her eyes glassy. "No, we did it. You gave me the first door." He smiled. "You were the one brave enough to walk through it." They stood in silence for a beat, the kind of silence that feels full, not empty. Then Emily took a slow breath. "There's something I haven't told you," she said. "That night on the bench, I wasn't just heartbroken. I was lost. I'd been told by someone I loved that I wasn't enough, that I was too emotional, too ambitious, too much." Noah's gaze didn't falter. "You are exactly enough." A tear slid down her cheek, and she didn't wipe it away. For once, she let it fall. "Thank you," she whispered. "I didn't do this for thanks," he said softly. "I just saw someone who deserved a beginning, and maybe I hoped being near your fire would remind me of mine too." She smiled, and for the first time in months, it reached her eyes. Something unspoken passed between them, not romance, not yet, but the kind of connection built on truth, timing, and mutual respect. The gala wound down, guests trickled out, and as Emily stood beneath the glowing chandeliers, she realized something powerful. She wasn't just moving on from the past, she was walking toward her future, not because someone had handed it to her, but because she had chosen it. There are moments in life when everything shifts, not with thunder or spectacle, but with a quiet sense of certainty, as if the path ahead once fogged and fractured, suddenly lights up one step at a time. That's how Emily felt the morning after the Meridian Gala. She woke before sunrise, the city still hushed in that fragile hour before movement. Her apartment no longer temporary, but her own felt different, warmer, not because of the morning light or the expensive fixtures, but because of what it held now. A woman no longer afraid of herself. She stood by the window, tea in hand, and watched the skyline stretch awake. Her thoughts drifted back to the night before. The applause, the soft touch of gratitude in strangers' voices, the woman who had approached her backstage and whispered, "Your designs made me feel seen." That one sentence lingered more deeply than all the press attention. Emily had never designed to be famous. She designed to tell stories, the kind that often go unnoticed. The quiet battles, the silent rebuilds, the invisible scars. By mid-morning, her inbox was overflowing. Magazine features, brand offers, a gallery proposal from Paris. It was surreal, yet she scrolled through it all with a calm heart, because now, for the first time, she knew her worth wasn't defined by how loudly the world clapped. It was defined by how bravely she stood even when no one was watching. Later that afternoon, she met with Noah in a quiet cafe tucked between two brownstones, the kind of place that smelled like old books and cinnamon. He was already there, sipping coffee and reading a folded newspaper. When he saw her, he smiled genuine, without expectation. "You're glowing," he said. She laughed lightly. "That's just leftover adrenaline and not enough sleep." But he looked at her differently, not because she had succeeded, but because she had transformed, and he had witnessed every step of it. They talked for hours about the show, the offers, and even the funny mistakes she'd made backstage. But eventually, the conversation turned deeper. "There's something I've been thinking about," Noah said, setting his cup down. "You have a voice now, people are listening. What do you want to do with that?" Emily leaned back, thoughtful. "That's the question, isn't it? I don't just want to make clothes that look beautiful. I want to make clothes that help people feel beautiful, heard, validated." Noah nodded. "You've lived through what so many people hide: heartbreak, rejection, reinvention. What if you built a brand around that?" A pause, then a flicker of realization sparked in her chest. Not a fashion line, a movement. By the end of the week, Emily had drafted the blueprint for something that felt bigger than herself. A socially conscious brand called Stitched, built around storytelling. Every collection would partner with survivors, underdogs, and everyday warriors, women and men who had rebuilt their lives after being broken. Each garment would carry a story, take a real one, not fiction, not branding fluff, but stories of resilience, printed discreetly on the inside seam. A hidden truth, carried close to the skin. She would donate part of every sale to mental health initiatives and local shelters. Her workshops would employ survivors of abuse and trauma, giving them training and healing through creativity. Stitched wasn't just about fashion, it was about reminding people that what holds them together isn't what's visible, it's what's underneath. Word spread faster than she imagined. Soon she was invited to speak at conferences. Her story was featured in a special docuseries about second chances, and in the crowd at one of her very first talks, she saw her former fiancé Jordan, standing silently near the back. He didn't approach, but their eyes met. He looked like someone wrestling with regret. Emily didn't look away. She didn't shrink. She simply nodded once, a silent goodbye to the girl who had once waited for someone to choose her. She had chosen herself now. Months passed. Stitched launched and immediately gained traction. But what mattered most to Emily wasn't the charts or trends. It was the letters. Handwritten notes from strangers who said things like, "I wore your dress to my divorce hearing, and I didn't feel invisible for the first time in years. My teenage daughter opened up to me for the first time after reading the story inside the coat I bought her. I cried when I saw your collection, not because it was pretty, but because it looked like me." Each one reminded her why she had started. Again. One evening, a full year after the gala, she stood on a quiet rooftop overlooking the city. Noah was beside her, as he had quietly been all along, not rushing anything, just showing up. He turned to her, his voice soft. "You know, I never told you why I was on that bench that night." She looked at him, surprised. "Why?" "I'd just stepped away from the company I built. Burnout, disillusionment. I didn't know what I was looking for until I met someone brave enough to build from her ashes." They were quiet for a while, the wind gentle, the stars shy. "Are you saying I saved you?" she asked, half teasing. "I'm saying we saved each other." And there it was. No grand declarations, no overdone romance, just two people, standing on the far side of heartbreak, facing a future they didn't have to figure out alone. Emily smiled at the skyline, grateful, steady, whole. She had once thought the end of her love story was the end of her story, but she had learned something vital. Sometimes life doesn't give you what you imagined, it gives you what you needed. A new beginning dressed as an ending. A stranger who saw your light before you did. A chance to become not someone new, but the person you were always meant to be. The threads that nearly unraveled her had, in the end, held her together. And now, she wove those same threads into stories so others could heal too.